Well, I'd like to just start off by bragging on God. Is that all right? Okay. You know, God created this human body, and it's composed of about 80 to 100 trillion cells. In the cell, there are various chemicals. In fact, everything on this planet is made out of chemicals. That's made out of chemicals. The rug, the concrete, your clothes. They're all made out of chemicals. In fact, God made this whole planet out of 92 chemical elements. Man has used a few isotopes to make 20 more. A chemical element is a chemical that you cannot break down any further. And so God made this cell. You may not be able to see this, but we got some things up there you might be able to see. Made the cell. And inside, there's probably approximately 100,000 chemical reactions occurring each second in the cell. So, let's talk about this cell for a minute. God put 27 chemical elements in this cell. So this cell is made out of 27 chemical elements. And he has approximately 20,000 enzymes, which combine with those 27 chemicals to produce over 100,000 chemical reactions a second. So I think if I would write, see this little dot I just put there? That would represent about 10, maybe 15 cells that we have. Now we have different type of cells. All cells don't look like this. A bone cell, nerve cell, muscle cell, maybe a blood cell would look something like this. So you have different structures. They all have different functions, but they all have the same chemistry. I got a break there. So all we got to do is learn how the chemistry of this cell works. So let's say this was 100,000 chemical reactions. I'm not going to be able to do that because I'll be here all night. But let's just take one of them. Now, how does these 20,000 enzymes work with these chemicals? This is a substrate. Let's say it's shaped like this. Somewhere in there, there's a specific substrate that fits right in here. I hope I can do this. I am the worst artist in the world. But see how that works in the cell? It fits in there and it breaks down the substrate. So that's what I'm trying to point out to you. Every enzyme is responsible for every chemical reaction in the body. I'm in the belief that we ought to start treating the cause of all illness, which is chemical. It's because everything's made out of chemicals. And if you come to me and you're sick, to me, you just have abnormal chemistry. That's the way I look at these things. So, chemicals. Now, there are 7 things that you must do in order for me to help you get better if you're sick. Number 1 is nutrition. If I don't feed the cell these 27 chemicals in their proper amounts, you'll never get well. This is where most of the illnesses start. We're not feeding the cell those 27 chemicals in their proper amounts. And you start having different things created. So, I'm going to talk in detail about nutrition. How are we going to feed those 27 chemicals in their proper amounts? That's the first thing. The second thing, every cell that I've ever seen has to have oxygen. I got to thinking about, why do we need oxygen? Well, Sir Isaac Newton answered that question for me. He was my idol. Everybody else in my years had Mickey Mantle on their board, and I had Newton. So I'm a nerd. But Newton says that nothing will move unless it's acted upon by an outside force. So oxygen goes into these old mitochondria in the cell, and it produces energy. It'll produce ATP. You ever heard of that big word? I said, that's your energy. That's what makes you move, is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And so oxygen will go in here and come out as ATP, and it has about 8 calories of energy per mole. Now, you don't like the word calorie, but that's important that you have calories here. So, calories. And that's what causes these enzymes to move. ATP will push this enzyme to find its substrate. You see. How many of you are tired all the time? This may be a problem right here with you creating ATP. It could be, there are other causes. But it could be that you just don't have any mitochondria. Now, I used to be the Olympic physiologist for America, and I had the privilege of testing the marathon runners. Now, these guys run 26 miles, 285 yards, and they average 4 minutes and 30 seconds a mile. Pretty good shape, aren't they? Yeah, well, I started looking at their gastroc and rectus femoris muscle and testing them, and I found that they had over 2,000 mitochondria in their gastrocnemius calf muscle and running muscle here. Boy, I was shocked. I didn't know that. This was back in 1984. And since then, I've been testing world-class athletes, and a guy named Lance Armstrong, I don't know if I should mention his name here, but he had 2,300. He broke my lab record of mitochondria. And so if he wanted to bicycle over that mountain, he had the energy to do it. How would you like to have energy like that? Just tremendous energy, you see. So the next thing is we've got to exercise if we want to create energy. You have to. There's no getting around it. If you don't want to do some kind of exercise, I'm not saying you have to ride over a mountain or run a marathon. I'm just saying you got to do some exercise if you want to get well. There are 3 types what you got to do. First of all, you got to do cardio. This is where you make your heart beat faster. You can walk a mile, walk a half a mile, depending on how fit you are. But you've got to walk or jog or ride your bike or swim or stationary to get your heart up. And you ought to do it 5 days a week. That would be ideal if you can do that. But don't start off hard now if you've never exercised, because you'll have ligaments sticking out of your bleeding out of the nose. So I want you to take your time. Some of you are getting older. You don't need to do that. That no pain, no gain doesn't work. Okay. All right, the second thing is you got to pump iron, muscle endurance. You got to develop your strength. And you got to develop your strength that all your joints that move, we call them diarthrial joints. Your fingers move. We got horror stories about senior adults that can't open their medicine. So squeeze. Your wrist, get you 1 pound. You can do 1 pound, turn it over and do it that way. Elbow, do this, do that. How many of you want to get the fat off the back of your arm? All right, I won't talk about it. Do this. That help tighten up that tricep muscle. Look at your shoulder. You got all kind of movements, you know. inward, outward. Your trunk, you can go down and back, and your head to the side. Do all these movements. Rotate. You see. Look at your hip. It's a ball and socket. It goes way out, comes back, up, back. Anybody got any music? I'm feeling excited here. It goes up and back, you see. Look at your knee. It just goes down and up. Your toe up and down. But you got to put an overload on those. And you need to do that 3 days a week. Number 3, flexibility. Boy, this is what's happened to our Americans. We've lost our flexibility. If you strengthen a muscle, like your fingers, stretch them, pull them apart, push them back, hang from a little bar. Walk through a door and stretch your shoulders. Sit down, walk back, you see. Touch your toes. Do all kind of flexibility. Or you're going to end up with a senior adult shuffle. You see, you don't need to lose your flexibility. That's the fastest thing you can develop in fitness is flexibility if you just work at it. So do that every single day of your life. You ever seen an old cat? What will he do? He'll get up and stretch, and that's what you need to do. Stretch. Okay. So number 2 is exercise. Number 3, let's just talk about enzymes if I'm talking about all this and how important they are. Enzymes get in your body 2 natural ways. First of all, your DNA makes it. Now that's pretty complicated. But the other way is raw food. I'm going to give a prescription right here. First one. You are to eat a raw salad every day. Because if you eat cooked foods, there's no enzymes. Enzymes start denaturing at 115 degrees. And I don't know of any enzyme that can live past 161 degrees. So when you eat cooked foods, you get no live enzymes. And so now you have to depend on your DNA and your nucleus to do it. And I'm going to show you this because I'm not going to talk down to you. And we got some intelligent people in here. And you're back in class. So let's look at the nucleus here. In the nucleus, if you remember correctly, there's chromosomes. There's 23 pair, if you're hopefully. Okay? What are chromosomes made of? They're made of genes. Boy, I like this. This is something I'm so excited about nobody even knows. I got a computer chip that's got every gene on it. Isn't that amazing? We've mapped out the genome. Does anybody understand the significance of that? We're going to make medicine today look barbaric in 5 years. I got some buddies that are really smart that are learning how to splice those bad genes out. That we already know where sickle cell anemia is. We already know where a lot of these diseases are. If we can learn to cut them out and then put the good one in, we're going to be able to heal some of these problems. It's exciting. We're going to use stem cells research. It's amazing what's going on right now. So, 40,000 genes. What's in a gene? There's where you find your DNA. You remember your little double helix? That's the worst one I ever drawn. Good gosh, that's sick. That DNA is sick. He's going to die. Okay, your DNA. They got better pictures on the wall if y'all can see all that. But the DNA, how many of you remember your T and A and C and G? Some of you nurses remember that? Okay, it's still there if you don't remember that. Well, T always goes with A and C always goes with G, doesn't it? Well, sometimes T will go with G. because of oxidative stress, free radicals that are created and so forth, like runners. Runners create a lot of free radicals, and these free radicals go crazy inside here and upset the thiamine or adenosine or whatever, and it gets out of whack. It's altered. When you alter this, we call this cancer, because cancer is alteration of your DNA. And so you got little repair enzymes that go up and down your DNA that tells old thiamine, get back there with adenosine. I don't know if it talks like that, but it gets back. It pushes it back is what it does, you see. Every one of you in here have cancer. You have cancer. You may have 1,000 to 10,000 cells that have already been altered. And if it wasn't because of these little repair enzymes that go up and down there, you would get full-blown cancer. So you see how critical these little repair enzymes are. I call them indoles and phenols. And I learned some foods that got all of that in there. And so the most important thing for you to do is to eat this food to get your immune system strong. Because this is where the immune system works, right here, you see. Now, what does DNA produce? Well, it makes amino acids. And these amino acids are 20 of them. You're made up of 20, actually 22, but 2 are very rare. So we say 20 amino acids. This may be phenylalanine, aspartic acid, valine, tryptophan, all those big words. But this is where I started believing in God. I'm a scientist, and I have to measure things. I have to see things. I hate to say that, but I had to. I saw these little things line up in the perfect sequence on every single one of them, just about. And there are 500 of them lengthwise. And that can't be random. So this is where I started believing in God. And how God makes those line up to make an enzyme. That's all an enzyme is these things all lined up in a certain way. So your enzymes are made up of 20 amino acids. Now I know that's pretty deep, but I hope to get back and try to explain to you why it's happening like this. Okay. So that's what enzymes are. You get them in raw food, and your DNA makes it. Now here's what's sad. When you reach age 40, not exactly that 40th birthday, but around 40, you start losing your DNA. It just doesn't make them anymore. Your body doesn't. So if you don't start making DNA, you see, doesn't start making the enzymes or the amino acids, then you're not going to make the right enzyme. You're going to have bad chemistry, and you're going to get sick. We lose almost 1,000 miles a day of DNA after you get around 40 years of age. Some of you sooner, some of you later. Now you say 1,000 miles? Yeah. Well, you want to look at God here for a minute, just a second? Let me just show you this. This is mind-boggling to me. You're not going to believe this. Inside each cell, or each gene, I should say, there's about 17 inches of DNA wound around. 17 inches. Is that about the width of that thing? Now we're talking small. That's 20 cells. Now we're in the nucleus. 17 inches. Well, how far would your DNA reach? If I could take all your DNA out of your cell and put them in the end, how far would it reach? Well, let's look here. Okay, you got 23 chromosomes times 17 inches times 40,000 times 100 trillion. Did you know your DNA would reach to the sun and back about 200 times? Are you smart enough to understand that? I'm not. I hope you are, because I can't. You see, so this is your God. This is your God, and the greatest thing he's ever, to me, that he's ever created was a human cell. I think it's the wonder among wonders of how that works. I've written 30 books on it. I've lectured all over the world, and I've come to one conclusion. I really don't know how it works. And if anybody says they do, I'd like to meet them. It's unbelievable how that works. So, enzyme. Now let's talk about the fourth thing we got to do. We got to get rid of waste out of the cell. When I look in people's cells, I see this all the time in my microscope. Oh, black stuff, about this color. Oh, dark gray, black. It's called medically lipofuscin. It has other names. It's made out of fat, lipo, lipids. It's called amyloids in the brain. That's Alzheimer's, right? I call it lipofuscin, and this is in the cells. Well, we got to get this waste out. Me and my colleagues believe if we can get the waste out of your cells, we could add 15 quality years to your life expectancy. Now, I think that's worth it, don't you? 15 quality years. Because what if that junk gets right here? Is that going to mess up your enzymes there? Man, then you're going to have circles, get sick all the time. So we got to get rid of the waste that's in here. Now, there are 3 ways we can do this. First of all, nutrition. Nutrition starts with an N, not an M. We're not going to eat as much fat. It's made out of saturated fat, if you really want to know. We're going to exercise. Now, you know, I've spent a lot of time with great athletes and marathon runners and track stars and unbelievable people. If you met them, you wouldn't believe it. And I've met all these people. But you know what the greatest thing about exercise is? It's not to make you look strong or to run or anything like that. It gets the waste out of your 100 trillion cells. The waste that you create. If you have 100,000 chemical reactions a second, are you going to have waste built up in your cell? If you don't go to the bathroom, you're going to have waste built up. You see, waste will kill you. So, waste. Exercise creates pressure inside your cell. And the waste will flow from high pressure to low pressure. Does that make sense? That's why all 11 systems of the body, the digestive, the endocrine, the reproductive, all the systems are improved when you exercise because you get the waste out. You think better, everything. You get the amyloids out. All this stuff is better when you exercise, you see. Third thing is hydration. This is a big problem in America. Hydration. You must hydrate more. You've got to drink water more. Hydrate. I want you to drink 64 ounces of water a day. That's your homework. Professors give homework. And I want the pH of that water to be about 7.2 or 7.4 or higher. pH, what does that mean? whether it's an acid or a base. There are some water companies that control the pH, like Fiji. If you had cancer, I would recommend Evermore, which is 9, you see. If you drink water with a pH of 7.4 or higher, that's good, because the human cell is 7.35 to 7.45. If it just drops to 7.3, some of your enzymes will not work. Wow, that's not much, is it? 7.3? What does American drink that's got a lot of acid in it? Soda pop. It has anywhere from 4.7 to 5.1. So what are you drinking? It's not the sugar that does you that bad, or it's not the caffeine. To me, it's the pH that gets you. Because remember, I'm a chemist, and you've got to go by acid base here. If it drops to 7.2, I'm going to make you get an MRI, because you've got cancer somewhere, in my opinion. Because every cancer cell I've ever tested was an acid. I used to have rats that we had big tumors on, and I'd inject them with baking soda, and they'd be gone the next day. Amazing. Cure cancer with baking soda. Somebody's going to shoot me one of these days if I say that. But you got to drink the water that has the pH. Drink it between meals. You won't get as much acid in it, and it will help you better. Because you've got to make an environment around this cell. It's got to be, in my opinion, a basic environment. Now, you have bicarbonates that change this. But if you overpower it with drinking soda pops every day, people tell me they drink 5 Dr. Peppers every day. That's not going to get it. Don't you blame God if you get sick. Okay. Use your brain. That's what it's for. So there's a Fiji, there's an Evermore, there's Jacob Springs water. That's the water that came out of Jacob Springs. You know, the woman at the well? I think Jesus drank that. It says in 2 Kings, and Elijah healed that water with salt or something, I don't know. And so I just think it's blessed water. I tell my patients, ask God to bless you every time you drink it. And I think He will. I can't measure it. I can't measure blessed, but I think it does. Okay, the 5th thing you've got to do. This is all new because I've just found it a couple of years. A friend of mine at Stanford created a new microscope. I was raised on the electron microscope. Measures about 350,000 in magnification. My buddy up there at Stanford, he founded another one on atomic magnetic resonance microscope. And it went to 2 million. So that's a pretty good jump in science, wouldn't y'all say, from 350 to 2 million? Wow, I looked at the cell in your leg at 2 million, and I bet I'd seen 1 million things that I'd never seen before in that cell. Me. I had a big old tear in my eye. My friend says, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Man, I got to learn 1 million new things." So, you see, you never get to learn God here. So, but I could see when you see, if you got a membrane protein, yeah, you got one up there. He's staying up with me pretty good. These membrane proteins, I could see them, but at 2 million, I could see them open and close. Is this amazing? Do y'all know what I'm saying here? So we had some graduate students. We've been having fun with it. And we created a real positive attitude in these kids. And we took some out of their cheeks and we looked at it, and that thing opened up wide. We created negative attitudes in them, and it shut down. You know you can make yourself sick with your mind? Any of you believe that? Any of you nurses ever see that? Amazing. So, from now on, we're not going to have any more pity parties. No more pity parties in Birmingham. That's through. We're going to have a positive self-talk. Everything is going to be half full. Does everybody understand that philosophy? We're not going to be negative all the time. You see. Emotions. I wonder if our emotions would open and close that particular membrane. God. When you laugh, it's the widest I ever get. What does the Bible say about laughter? It might be the best medicine, huh? So from now on, you're to have a good belly laugh every single day. Not in the, I don't want any of this laughing like this. I want you to belly laugh. You ever laugh so hard you... That's the laughter you should have. And before you go to bed at night, you say, have I had a good belly laugh? And if you hadn't, then you get up and go laugh. Go watch Kramer or something like that. Mike and I got to laughing. We both liked the Carol Burnett show. Have you all seen Tim Conway and Corman when he was a dentist and he stuck himself with the in his leg? If you don't laugh at that, you're sick. You need to go see a psychologist. You're really hurting. Okay. All right. So when you're happy, when you're kind to people, when you give, doesn't it say it's better to give? When you encourage people, it's open. But when you get angry, it shuts down. Fear, depression, it's shut down. You see. What do you say to yourself when somebody almost runs you off the road? Well, we got this going in Waco, Texas. That's where I live. We got about 3,000 on this diet. And here's our new sign. When somebody gets angry, when you get angry, I want you to do this. I have people come by me all the time now. I told this at a big medical conference that I was speaking to. And that was a big hit at the conference. All the doctors loved that. They just, okay. So, your emotions can affect your health. Then I'm a Baylor professor. You know, at Baylor, we still believe in God over there. We really believe in God. And if you don't believe in God, you don't teach at Baylor. That's what it amounts to. But we have some great Christian professors there. I recommend that to any one of y'all that want to send your children there. We got the great facilities, the science machines, and we teach it in a Christian atmosphere. And I just think it's wonderful. Well, we got to fooling around. We had this sick guy, and we all put our hands on him, and those membranes popped open real wide. We prayed for the guy, and he knew we were praying for him, and it just popped open. You see. Then we had a group that nobody knew who we were praying for. We just knew it was a man that was sick, and it still popped open. So, there's a God. We better quit playing around, playing these little games here, and get our worship back together. So you see, you are a 4-part person, aren't you? You're physical, Some of you have let your physical go, and now it's starting to affect the other three: your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual. If you neglect one of those areas, it's going to affect the other three. So for me to help you, you've got to do those 7 things in order to get better. Okay. Now, I would like to talk to you about my new research that I've done in inflammation. I've spent 30 years trying to figure this out. Because everybody that comes to this doctors and see the doctors and so forth, they're in inflammation. And inflammation is just besieging America. I've never seen so many Americans with inflammation. We are the sickest country in the world. We have more people going to the doctor than any other country in the world. And I've been trying to figure out what in the world's happening. What chemically? It's got to be chemical. Everything's chemical. So I traced in this cell, I'm in the cell now, I traced inflammation where it starts and then where it becomes inflammation. Everything always has a metabolic pathway. You remember chemistry you had to learn all those metabolic pathways? Well, you got metabolic pathways. It starts with omega-3s and omega-6s. That's where it starts within the cell. That's fatty acids that you have to get in your diet. Omega-6s break down, as you can see on the board, into 4 enzymatic reactions to the only big word I want you to know: arachidonic acid. Now, God makes omega-3s, and they break down into 3. You don't need to know all this, but the third is EPA and DHA. You ever seen those on fish oils and things? And that enters the metabolic pathway right here. So God has a little safety check. He doesn't want you to produce too much arachidonic acid. Because from now on, everybody in here don't like arachidonic acid. We have declared war on arachidonic acid because this is what's causing all your inflammation. We've traced it down to one chemical. Now this is amazing. Arachidonic acid, we're still in the cell, is then broken down by the cyclooxygenase, or the big COX enzyme, down to your prostaglandins. EPA is another enzyme, eicosapentaenoic acid. We'll break it down to 5 different types of leukotrienes. We see these on TV sometimes. Now, why am I showing you this? You don't need to know all this. But I'm drawing you a picture because when prostaglandins and leukotrienes are produced in the cell, they're released out of these cell membranes. And there it calls the most powerful system in the human body, your immune system, to attack. And boy, here comes the most complicated, synchronized system I ever seen. When I lecture to my medical students on the immune system, I tell them, I say, guys, I'm unworthy, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And when I get through lecturing on the complexity of this system and the synchronization, I look out at my students, and they're all going, isn't that a great? And that's what teachers want, isn't it? How many of you are teachers? Don't you want your students to look like that sometimes? And amazement is to see how that immune system works. because it sends 5 different types of white blood cells. One of them is called a killer T cell. It sends cytokines, immunoglobulins, antibodies. I mean, all these big words, but a big war breaks out. I mean, something is going to die when it's released. And we call that inflammation. It's called the war within. Here are the symptoms. Swelling. You ever swell up? Redness. You ever turn red? And pain. Anybody in Birmingham have pain? Anybody that doesn't have pain would be the best question, wouldn't it? Pain. So you see, those are the symptoms of inflammation. Let me tell you some diseases that I know of that I call inflammation. The AMA may not have listed it as inflammation, but inflammation is part of that process. Let's start with the A's. Anybody here got allergies? Asthma? Arthritis? Anybody have atherosclerosis, heart disease? High blood pressure? ADD in our children? ADHD? Autism? What in the world's going on? Autism? Alzheimer's? Those are just the A's. MS. Before I came, I had 2 MS patients. That's the saddest thing I ever seen. Why does a white blood cell eat the myelin sheets off the nerve? I ought to be able to figure that out, and I can't do it. But MS, fibromyalgia, you know anybody with that? Lupus, gout, eczema, psoriasis, hives, pancreatitis, hepatitis, nephritis, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, celiac, constipation, diabetes, cancer. You know anybody with that? Why is there being attacked by their own immune system? Why? It's because they have too much of this. Too much arachidonic acid. I've declared war. I had 4 PhD students. This is 12 years ago now. And I told them, I said, I want you to tell me how much arachidonic acid is in food sold at a food store, because it's coming from somewhere else. You can't make enough arachidonic acid to have this kind of sickness in America. So they came back about 3 years later, and they said, we found it in meats. Anybody in America eat meat? We found it in dairy products. Anybody here like cheese? Butter? You like all that? Found it in palm oil. Anybody know what that is? It's found in boxes or packages of food because it keeps everything crispy. Keeps it preserved. Palm oil. We found it in egg yolks. Oh, that hurt me. I like eggs. She said, I found 300 milligrams in one egg yolk of arachidonic acid. And then this little girl, the smartest student I ever had, she said, I found a bunch of it, Dr. Cooey, in farm-raised animals. 12 years ago, I didn't even know what that was. It's embarrassing, isn't it? I thought it was a farmer feeding his chickens. That's what I did when I was a kid, feed the chickens. I said, what do you mean by that, farm-raised? She says, they're taking our fish, our chicken, our turkey, pork, and our beef, and they're feeding it processed grain. Processed grain. And now they're genetically modifying the grain. That's my business, is DNA. What they're doing, they're making proteins that the immune system's never seen before. And when you eat that kind of food, that protein gets in you, and your immune system attacks it. So you've got so much of, I picture y'all sitting here with a arachidonic acid just spilling out of your fingers. Look at that. You got it all over the floor. If that happens, if a little piece of pollen landed here, boom, we got allergies. If it's in our joints, oh, it's arthritis. It normally attacks your weakest organ, your weakest system. The digestive system is probably the number one system it attacks first. Belching, burping, flatulence. I hope you're not here. You see. So, just look at your life. Look at your life and see what's happening to you. This is the chemical cause of arachidonic acid. We've got to reduce this in you. And if it's found, the omega-6s are found in the meats here, then that's what makes arachidonic acid. So we need to eat more threes. I asked, where were the threes found? They said, we found a bunch of threes in raw nuts. The greatest source is found in flaxseed. That's where you find the best omega-3s, in flaxseed oil. And in wild fish. This is where you find all these omega-3s, the most omega-3s. That's where you find it, wild fish. So, they came back they came back about 3 years, and they had a bit like their last seminar. And they said, we're going to call this Cooey's Challenge. Now, I really like that because they were praising me. You know, look at that, my name. For 6 weeks. Then I realized they just wanted an A. And the word got out that I could be bought. So they got an A. I said, does Americans eat more of this food than they're eating that? Well, you tell me. What do you think it is? I'm going to say 50-1. This may not be real science here, but it's close enough. We're eating 50 times more 6s than we are 3s. So that arachidonic acid is just dripping out of us. You see that? So, the first challenge on Cooey's Challenge, number 1, is you've got to reduce arachidonic acid in your body. Now, how am I going to do that? This is what you're going to go on for 6 weeks. You go on this for 6 weeks, and if you have any pain when they get through at 6 weeks, you call me up and tell me ugly names or something, okay? I've seen miracles with this. I've seen people don't have any pain, arthritic pain. Okay. So for 6 weeks, I don't want you to eat no meat, no dairy, no palm oil, no eggs, and you're to never eat another farm-raised animal. I'm going to get Monsanto. Monsanto is killing us. You've heard it here. I shouldn't say this on TV. But my buddies and I are going to get them. Look at the sick kids. That's okay. Now, don't make a break for it. Let me finish out before you make a break for it and say, I'm through. I'm not going to go without meat. Let me just show you what you can eat. Number 2. This ratio should be 1-to-1 are no greater than 4-to-1. That means you can eat 4 times more 6s than you do 3s, and you won't make the inflammation response. But if you go over 4 times, unless you're a real big person, I can't promise you that you won't have pain or inflammation. So you've got to start eating more 3s in your diet. So I want you to eat some raw nuts, walnuts, almonds are great, cashews. I love cashews. I had some in the airport the other day, but it had salt in it, so I didn't have any enzymes because it wasn't raw, you see. Cashews, pecans. We're having a good pecan year in Waco. Peanuts, pistachios, macadamias. No roasted and no salt on it. That means raw to get your enzymes and your 3s. I want you to put flaxseed on everything you can. You can grind it up, put it on your salads, your vegetables. You can't taste it, but it's full of 3s. Okay. Then I want you to eat wild fish during this 6 weeks. Try to eat it at least 3 times a week. Now I'm going to give you some fish you shouldn't eat. In Waco now, I don't have a Whole Foods, so y'all think of where you are in your Whole Foods. But we can't find tilapia wild, grouper. We can't find catfish wild. So I don't recommend those 3 if you can't get it wild. But you can eat wild salmon, halibut. I love halibut. You ever eat a halibut? I think that's a great fish. If you don't like halibut, you're a communist. I shouldn't say that on TV. I forgot I'm on TV here. Okay, halibut, orange roughy, mahi-mahi, tuna. Sardines is the greatest source of the omega-3s. Shrimp, lobsters, oysters, crabs, scallops, as long as it's wild. They got a lot of shrimp farms now. So, wild fish, at least 3 days a week. You can eat it all every day if you want to. Now, so we're going to eat wild fish. And we're going to eat raw nuts. And we're going to put flaxseed on everything, aren't we? We might even cook with flaxseed oil. Okay, this is the way your patients ought to eat. If you wanted to get them well, some of you nurses, some of the doctors in here, I'm telling you, this stuff works. If they'll do it, they got to have discipline to do it. But the first 2 weeks is the hardest, but after 2 weeks, you're going to enjoy some of this food I'm talking about, okay? Somebody say, no way, yeah. Number 3 challenge. Eat foods low on the glycemic index. Boy, this is really important. The glycemic index, that's the most guarded thing in the human body because it's the brain's food. It's the only food the brain eats is glucose. So glucose has to remain within a certain parameter. The brain doesn't want too much glucose, and it doesn't want too little glucose. Those parameters, in my opinion, now these change, is between 70 milligrams and about 120. and you feel best between 90 and 100. That's the smartest you're going to be, between 90 and 100. Because if your glucose level goes outside those parameters, you're going to have brain fog. Any of you having brain fog already? Did you eat a donut this morning? You're sitting here, brain fog. Sweet rolls? You see. So, if you eat foods high, this will go up to 200. And the brain tells the pancreas, flood the system with insulin. I guess it says that, I don't know. But flood the system with insulin. It floods the system. Here goes the glucose. Way down to 50. What do we call that? Hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia. You ever had that where you're so sleepy after you eat? You can hardly hold your eyes open. You're tired, lethargic, brain fog. That's called the crash, you see. I call it pre-diabetes. We got nearly 50 million of diabetics in America, more than 3 times any other country. Is that costing us a lot of money with people with diabetes? Well, you get a free meter. You see? So, if you eat foods high, it's going up there. And then you're going to flood the system with insulin. It's coming down. And then you're going to end up with diabetes. That's one of the most dangerous diseases I've ever seen. It's a vascular disease. You'll go blind. Retinopathy. They'll cut your feet off. Look what it's doing to your kidneys, your heart, your liver. Vascular disease. So don't worry and say, oh, you just take a little metformin or something, you'll be okay. That's not. You get on a strict diet here. So, I'm going to give you 2 nevers. You're to never eat processed foods again. Now, it's almost impossible, but I want you to try. Here's what they've done in America. They won't do this in Europe. Very few countries over here do this. In America, we took the wheat seed and the rice seed, and we removed the outer 3 layers because it would last longer. And we took the endoderm and bleached it white, made white flour, white rice. God feeds what, 3/4 of the world probably with those 2 seeds? See? And we changed it. We make white flour. Anything made out of white flour in Birmingham? Have you ever been to a convenience store? They ought to call it a processed food store. In Texas, I went in there to pay for some gas and had to wait around because everybody's buying a lottery ticket. Did everybody do that here? And I looked in this store and I only found 2 foods in the whole store that wasn't processed. An apple and a banana. And they were both brown. You don't go in there to get an apple or a banana. So, white flour. Everything's made out of white flour. Just about everything we eat is processed with white flour or white rice, you see. So, you're to never eat processed foods again. Nothing white. And if you're real sick, that means a white potato too. If you're real sick. Never eat, another one, refined sugar. Now that's almost impossible because everything's got sugar in it. One of my little master students came back. I taught her all the big words for sugar, like sorbitol, levulose, fructose, all those big words. And I told her to go to the food market and tell me how many things got sugar in it. She came back and she's a cute little thing, big eyes. Dr. Curry, 92% of everything sold in that store had sugar in it. 92%. My goodness. Well, let's just look at the standard. I love this one. This is one of my books. Let's look at the standard American diet. What does that say? Sad. Let's look at the average American this morning. Got up, ate a sweet roll or a donut. You know that's the number 4 food eaten in America? The number 5 food eaten is sugary cereals like Frosted Flakes, Cocoa Fruity Pebbles, Fruit Loops, Camp Chocolate, all these things. Then they put jams and jelly on their white toasted, white bread toasted. Then at 10, they hit the crash. So they get them a Snickers to wake up. You know where Snickers are made? Waco, Texas. Then at noon, they have more sugar. Then at 3, so what do they get then? A soda pop. A 12-ounce can has 10 teaspoons of sugar in it. But we drink the 20-ounce bottle. Or the 48-ounce big gup. We got 2 hands and a straw. What is that acid doing to them? You see. So, never eat refined sugar to the best of your ability. Oh, by the way, at night in Texas, we eat Bluebell ice cream. Y'all have Bluebell ice cream? God eats Bluebell ice cream. He has to. It's so good, you see. Do you think you could stand on it for 6 weeks? I'm going to tell you what you can't eat. What can you eat? That's what you came here today for. All right. Let me erase some of this stuff here. What can we eat? Okay. What time is it, guys? Y'all want to take a break real quick? 5 minutes? Okay. Okay, what can we eat? Number 1, we can eat whole grains. Whole grain wheat bread. I want you to eat Ezekiel bread. You ever heard of that? Do you know that's the only recipe in the Bible? Ezekiel 4:9, if you want to read it. Ezekiel 4:9. I read it. I got a mass spectrometer in my big lab, and I took what was in that Bible of how to make that bread, and I put it through that big machine. I can tell you everything in that food. Did you know it had all 9 amino acids, which are proteins? It had complex carbohydrates. It even had the right type of fat in it. But the protein would shock me. I never seen bread with protein in it like that. So God told Ezekiel to give it to his army because it would give them strength and they can fight the battle. You know who Ezekiel, read the Bible. You know who that is, right? Ezekiel? Okay. So, I want you can't have any butter on it. You can't have dairy, can you? I'm going to let you have almond butter. You ever heard of that? Cashew butter. Okay. Then I want you to eat whole grain cereals. You can have whole grain cereals, things like Honey Nut Cheerios, Wheat Chex, Brand Chex, Special K. They even got Ezekiel cereal. You see. But you can't have any milk. Golly. What are we going to do? Almond milk. Bless your heart. Put you some almond milk on it. What is that? Made out of what? Threes. Omega-3s. See what I'm tricking you? Some of my students call me Tricky Dicky. Okay. Eat whole grain cereals. Use almond milk, rice milk. I'm worried about soy milk because Monsanto owns over 96% of all the soy, and they're changing it. It'd be pretty hard to get some good soy. But I guess it's better than, I don't know, I guess it's better than normal milk. All right, whole grain, pasta. Whole grain, my mind's going blank. Cereal, pasta, wheat, oats. Thank you. To make you oatmeal. Boy, that's good for you. Oatmeal. Now I want that steel cut oat. I don't want any of those 5-minute microwave oats. Whole oats. Steel cut oats. It takes 30 minutes to cook them. Now, that's a good breakfast for you, isn't it? What have I got? I want you to put as many berries as you can on there. Blueberries, blackberries, strawberry, goji berries are real good. Put those berries on there. Put some flax on it. Put your raw nuts on it. Y'all practice that. Snack on those things if you get hungry. Raw nuts. Put some fruit on it if you're not a diabetic. If you're a diabetic, you cannot have these fruits. You can't have watermelon, pineapple, kiwi, mangoes, and bananas. Anything over 55 on the glycemic index, you can't have. So you need to look up the glycemic index. My book has a bunch of it. Okay. So that's a good breakfast. Doesn't that sound good? You can eat that, can't you? Okay. You can have brown rice. You have rye bread, things like that. I'm just giving you an idea. You can eat any kind of legume. What's a legume? Beans or peas. I want you to eat them fresh. Go to the farmer's market. You can have them frozen at some certain times, but no more cans. Don't open up another can of beans. You can have tubers. Tubers are anything grown under the earth. You can't have a white potato, but you can have a sweet potato. Or you can have a new red potato. Now, people ask me why. Because red potato is a white potato, it really is. So here's the reason why. God made the sweet potato and the red potato so constructed tightly that it takes our enzymes a long time to break it down. That doesn't make our glucose go up. The white potato is so loosely constructed it explodes in the glucose. And if you're diabetic, you can't have that. So, you can have some more tubers or onions, carrots, garlic, beets, radish. Radish is one of the best foods you can eat. Let's see, what else we got in there? Turnips, did I mention all that? Okay, you can have those tubers. You can have any fruit you want unless you're diabetic. Now here's the key to everything. You won't believe this. The veggies. You can have any vegetable you want. Any one. But I want you to eat 2 raw servings 2 raw servings of a cruciferous vegetable. You ever heard of cruciferous? Well, they got their name 1,500 years ago because their seed's shaped like a crucifix. Now, I'm going to check it out. I'm a regular professor. And I checked that food out in my mass spectrometer, and you wouldn't believe what came back. They had those phenols and endos. How many of you have been listening? Where are they? You're just like some of the doctors. Phenols and endos, your repair enzymes that go up and down your DNA. The most important thing in the body for you is your repair enzymes. And it goes up and down the DNA. You see, there are 12 of these cruciferous vegetables. I have them listed in my book. I'm going to try to give you some of them anyway. I can't remember. But I can get the big ones. How many of you like raw cabbage? Kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, watercress, radish. A radish is a cruciferous vegetable. Well, just read all those books back there, and it'll have it. Or you can Google cruciferous, and there are 12 of them. Okay. That's right. All right. That's what you can eat. Now, that's not too bad, is it? How many of you could do that cooey challenge? Well, I saw one hand. I guess it was worth it.